love it, but who cares about whether I win or lose money? That performance by Elaine Thompson-Herah was incredible. 10.61 into a headwind. It wasn't even close. She was celebrating before she even crossed the line. And it wasn't like she beat a depleted field. She beat the best field we probably have ever seen in any global final. And she did it convincingly. And wow, that's all I got to say is wow.
Yeah, listen, this event was just building and building and building. Saw how fast they go in the first round. Then in the semis, earlier on today, Fraser-Pryce drops a 10.73. 4 women go sub 8. Toulouse obviously was the big story out of the first round. So you're thinking, okay, this is going to be the greatest women's 100-meter field in history. And you could argue that it was based on what we saw in those first 2 rounds. But Elaine Thompson-Herah's last 50 made this a blowout. It was boltish over the last 50, even pointing to the clock, celebrating early. She had just complete command, complete control. This defends her title from Rio. Fraser-Pryce and Shericka Jackson run really well. They go 10.74 and 10.76, but the 10.61, number 2 all time, ties FloJo's second best mark in history. If you run that, you just have to tip your cap if you're the rest of the field. Because if you look at this race, Gordon, I mean, it was just a clinic that Thompson-Herah put on.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hilarious looking at that photo of Elaine Thompson-Herah celebrating and the look on Shelly-Ann's face of just disappointment. And it's kind of weird, right? Jamaica did a huge sweep, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you would think there would be like this joy, but you could tell that all 3 of those Jamaican athletes thought they should have won or they could have beaten each other. And to them, this wasn't a team effort of going 1, 2, 3. This was them losing to who they all thought they should have won, right? So while the team Jamaica and everyone in the country of Jamaica and Jamaican fans are celebrating, I know for a fact Fraser-Pryce and Shericka Jackson are like, no, that should have been me, which is great. That's why they're running so fast. They've been beating up on each other throughout the entire season. You saw, Fraser-Pryce got the double at the Jamaican trials. Now Elaine Thompson-Herah gets the win here. Shericka Jackson is probably, Shericka Jackson's going to be someone to look out for in that 200. Oh, man, the Jamaican trio is a treat, and we are very lucky to be seeing this. And, of course, one can only imagine what it would have been like if Sha'Carri Richardson was in that race. I don't know if she would – do you think she would have been able to beat Elaine Thompson-Herah in that? Do you think she would have been running 10.60 or 10.59?
I mean, if you ask me what would be the one ingredient to add to this final to make it even better, it was already pretty good. It would have been adding her. But no, I think this was Thompson-Herah's day. 10.61 is otherworldly. It's only ahead of or only behind FloJo's mark. As I said before, I think this was going to be Thompson-Herah's race. Listen, now they each have 2 Olympic golds, Thompson-Herah and Fraser-Pryce. You look at Fraser-Pryce's entire body of work. Of course, she's older. She's amassed much more medals, but this could have been just the cherry on the top of her entire career. And I mean, her career is fantastic, and she has a bad race, quote unquote, and still gets silver and just adds to her medal haul. I mean, she's been doing this now since 2008. Nothing to be ashamed of in that. I get that she's disappointed. And Shericka Jackson, she has a bronze medal now in the 400 and in the 100. That's incredible.
You know who might be doing that tomorrow? We might be seeing an American doing that on the men's side.
Yeah. Hopefully Fred Curley can channel Shericka Jackson.
For those, I know you said I shouldn't be doing this, but I did it. It was into a headwind, right? So
you can do it. Have fun.
Naturally, I want to figure out what would this have been if there was no wind at all. If there was no wind, it would have been a 10.57. No wind. With 10 meters altitude, because I'd put in the Tokyo altitude. Now, with that said, if she had a plus 2.0 wind, maybe we're talking about a low 10.50. Like if she had the perfect tailwind that was 100% legal. I mean, obviously that's not how it works, but it just shows this wasn't a 10.61 with a plus 1.9. It was into a headwind. Incredible.
Yeah. Well,
Speechless.
you also got to talk, whenever there's a fast time, we always talk about all the things that could have made it faster. And we don't talk about the things that made it fast in the first place. By all accounts, the conditions were perfect, good humidity level, good temperature. The track is obviously fast. We've now seen the women's 100, but we also had the men's 100 today, which produced a bunch of quick times too. And then you throw in the fact that you have this incredible field. So everybody knew that they had to run their best race if they wanted to win. And all those things are pointing in the direction of a fast time. If you told me at the beginning of the year, 10.61 for the Olympic final, I'd have said that's ambitious. But if you told me that after Fraser-Pryce had run 10.63 already this year and all those other low 10.7s that we saw from Thompson and what we saw in the first round and what we saw in the semi, it tracks. But no doubt it was one of the all-time performances, and the image of her pointing at the clock as she crosses the line is going to be one that's right up there with Bolt celebrating early and all the other. I think back to Jeter anchoring the U.S. 4x1 team in London as one of those photos that you never forget. But yeah, sweet for Jamaica. Sweet for Jamaica. 1, 2, 3.
Big shout out to Kai in the chat, All in the Game in the chat, and DC Knoll in the chat for all congratulating me with my prediction. She was what was her odds? She was a plus 175 to win. So I put $100 on and I win 275. Pretty good.
Yeah. And in retro, you watch the final and you think, wait a minute, how was she ever considered the underdog? But sprinting gives us more data points than most other track events. We just had the 10,000 yesterday where we were basically grasping at straws because how many 10,000s are there in a year? But when you factor in how small the margins are, and we don't really know in finals or in prelims and semifinals how hard people are going, you can lead yourself to make some assumptions that ultimately prove out to be incorrect. Again, I think Fraser-Pryce ran a solid race. I think Jackson ran a phenomenal race. It's just when someone runs 10.61, what are you supposed to do? There's no game plan to beat that unless you have a time machine and you can go back to 1988.
So we talk about legacy. Obviously, Shelly-Ann Fraser-Pryce is at nearing the end of her legacy, end of her putting a bow on her resume. But now that Elaine Thompson-Herah has 2 Olympic golds, has a faster PB, and is now 8-2 head-to-head against Shelly-Ann, should we be kind of thinking about maybe putting Elaine Thompson ahead of Shelly-Ann on the all-time Jamaican mark? Like, it just seemed like, oh yeah, it's Shelly-Ann, duh. Guys, obviously, see, you've been watching the past 10 years, it's Shelly-Ann. Yeah. But now it's like, well, have you been watching the past 2 Olympics? It might be Elaine Thompson.
Well, in between those Olympics, though, you had 2019 where she got another gold. Okay, so let's just limit this conversation to the 100. Let's not bring the 200 in. So let's just talk about who has the better 100-meter resume. I mean, Fraser-Pryce still has 6 100-meter gold medals. She doesn't have the fastest time, and obviously Thompson-Herah is now the 2-time Olympic champion, but just a longevity. And part of that's because she's older. So Thompson-Herah, I think with this win now, Gordon, has the opportunity to catch her. Because if she did not win this race, then Fraser-Pryce has 7 global outdoor 100-meter titles, and Thompson-Herah has 1. So instead of being 7-1, it's now 6-2 with, as we talked about before, championship coming up 22, 23, 24. But I think she's going to need a couple more years, a couple more titles before we start to have that conversation and have it be an actual conversation.
And while Shelly-Ann, you can argue, will be going, her ability will be going down as she get older. She's 34 now. Sha'Carri is going to make things a little bit harder on Elaine Thompson to go on a run here with multiple straight gold medals.
Yeah. In a way, this was the result that's going to yield the most interest moving forward. Because if it was Fraser-Pryce winning the gold, you could say, okay, and Thompson-Herah didn't have a good Olympics, then okay, it's going to be a clear handoff from Fraser-Pryce to Richardson, from one dominant figure to the next. And we'd look at Thompson-Herah and we'd say, yeah, she was great in 2016, but had all those injuries issues and could never get back. Instead, we got Thompson-Herah now at her peak, going against Richardson at her peak, and we'll see what Fraser-Pryce is able to do. Again, I don't know. I don't know if she said anything about it, but if you're Fraser-Pryce, why would you stop? You ran your PB this year and you got a silver medal in what to you was a disappointing race. I would think you'd keep going because there aren't any off years on the horizon now.
Yeah, she'll keep going until Mother Nature tells her to stop, right? I guess Justin Gatlin went all the way to 38, 39, 40. I can see Shelly-Ann keep going until the wheels fall off and she's not able to run the 10.8s, 10.7s anymore. But as long as she can wake up on a random day and be able to throw down a 10.9 with very minimal training, I think she's going to keep going.
Mm-hmm. And this just sets up beautifully for this 200 later on in the meet with the Jamaican trio trying to recreate the sweep maybe, but it's going to be tough with the Americans in there, but also Shauna Miller-Weibo as well too. We won't see Dina Asher-Smith in there. She did not make the final in the 100 and then said afterwards that she's going to scratch out of the 200. So the 200 does lose some firepower with the reigning world champion. But if someone runs 10.61 in 100, they're going to have a pretty good 200 meter time. And we all saw Thompson-Herah's, Beijing 2015 200. We know how fast she can go in that event. So we could see something historical again from her in the 200. What else surprised you in this 100? The Americans only got one to the final in Tiana Daniels. Toulouse, who I mentioned, ran really good through the first two rounds. Still finished fourth, solid performance, but 10.91, which is slower than she had run previously. Switzerland gets two to the finals, and Daryl Netta makes it for Great Britain.
Yeah, Toulouse, you could tell in the semifinals that she wasn't going to medal because when her and Shericka both ran like their 10.7s or 10.8s in the semis, Toulouse looked like she was it was her final, and Shericka